Welcome to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of bubbles. It was the age of austerity. It was the epoch of free money. It was the epoch of bedroom taxes. It was the season of LIBOR rigging. It was the season of food banks. It was the spring of eternal copyright and infinite rehypothecation. It was the winter of workfare and tins of cheap spaghetti. The 1% had everything given to them. The 99% had everything taken from them. Yes, darling.
This is the tale of two classes of people, one above the law, one subject to the law. And the first headline is about the fracking industry, where, of course, they've had very good times. Not so much their investors, of course, who have lost big time on their share prices and bond prices, everything collapsing. Well, Texas oil town makes history as residents say no to fracking. The Texas town where America's oil and natural gas boom began has voted to ban fracking in a stunning rebuke to the industry. Denton, a college town on the edge of the Barnett Shale, voted by 59% to ban fracking inside the city limits, a first for any locality in Texas. However, the industry has already applied for an emergency injunction to prevent this democratic process from happening. Right. The democratic process will not be allowed to determine the outcome of this anti-fracking revolt. Because as we've said on this show, just to review, fracking is completely uneconomic. It never extracts anywhere near the amount of GDP growth that it costs going in, or the energy coming out is nowhere near the energy it costs going in. The carcinogenics are enormous. The ecological damage is immense. The water is poisoned. It makes no sense. It's a hoax. It's a stupid idea. Yeah, and it was great times for the frackers, again, but for the actual residents of this town, there were constant noise, fumes, dust, everything. But also, the frackers, basically, they drilled under the church. They drilled under the schools. The local parents and people tried to stop them from doing that. And they said, well, we could do whatever we want because your town is fair game for us. We could do whatever we want here. So all they wanted was to be able to restrict where they could drill, that they couldn't drill under like an elementary school, but they would do it. So now they had to just outright ban because they wouldn't work, the frackers wouldn't work with them. Well, again, they voted against it because they're voting for their own self-interest. They don't want to die of cancer from fracking fluid. But the corporate hegemony that rules the roost, that rules over this poor town in Texas, will be given carte blanche to murder. So the corporations had free lunch. The citizens had very expensive lunch. Now we turn to another tale of two, realities for two different classes of people. Here in the UK, we have this electrical specialist ordered to work for free for 6 months after paid contract with firm ends. A man has been ordered to work for a company for 6 months for no pay by the Department of Work and Pensions, despite the fact that his contract with the firm had ended. Electronics specialist John MacArthur, 59, is surviving on 16p tins of spaghetti and doing without heating after having his state benefits cut for refusing to work unpaid for a company which had formerly paid him the minimum wage. So the whole idea of wages, as they relate to an economy, are being written out of the history of economics, because wages would lead to savings, which would create capital, which is the basis of capitalism. But we're post-capitalism. Doesn't need wages, don't need taxes. Because when the central banks and the corporations have access to unlimited free money at 0% interest, you don't need workers, you don't need wages, you don't need taxes. So they have all the political power to disenfranchise anyone they want at will. So these people are being asked to basically walk the plank into the abyss of the no man's land there. So again, this is the tale of two classes. There are only two classes. There's no such thing as an upper class, an upper middle class, a middle class, a lower middle class, a lower class anymore. There's just those inside the moat and those outside the moat. This man is outside the moat. He has to work for free if he wants some scraps of bread from the government, i.e. from those inside the moat. So he's refusing to work for slave labor because he used to be able to actually command a wage for his electrical work. Now he's being asked to work for free. So he went from being paid to going free. So now we're going to look at the richest man in the world, Bill Gates, worth $80 billion right now. here is a man who takes what used to be free and puts a toll booth up and charges huge amounts of money. So a group has looked at his charitable donations, or the Bill Gates group, the foundation, and what they found was Gates Foundation spends bulk of agriculture grants in rich countries. African NGOs received just 4% of Bill Gates' money for agricultural work, with 75% for U.S. organization report says. It also appeared that they were not listening to farmers despite their claims. The overwhelming majority of its funding goes to high-tech outfits, not to supporting the solutions that the farmers themselves are developing on the ground. Africa's farmers are cast as recipients, mere consumers of knowledge and technology from others. So the bulk of the money is going towards a monoculture, towards seeds that don't reproduce, this sort of Monsanto, Syngenta sort of philosophy, and the former Green Revolution, i.e. the monoculture.
Yeah, it's a copyright, trademark, and patent empire. And Bill Gates has taken that model from Microsoft, which, for all intents and purposes, destroyed much of the creative industry in America for years by having that desktop monopoly, and thwarted Apple from growing for a decade or so. Apple has had to fight that for many years, but so have many other innovators. They killed Netscape, if you recall, Mark Andreessen's company, when he started back in the 1994 era. And then they're applying this to food. And this is where it becomes quite insidious and horrific, is that they're bringing that whole Monsanto model of the Terminator seeds, the need to patent your plants. And as you point out, the irony here is that nature was already providing these things for free. But Bill Gates wants to get in the middle and be a toll collector and get money on what is free. The same thing is happening with water and oxygen and food. All these things that would be considered human rights are now being commodified and securitized and financialized by the likes of Bill Gates, using his enormous $80 billion ill-gotten cash pile from copyright extraction. The reason Aaron Swartz was murdered by Chris Dodd, if you recall, according to his dad. And they're using that to enslave the globe in this copyright, patent, and trademark empire, which is becoming increasingly more problematic. I would point out that Taylor Swift, who was working for slave labor on Spotify, divorced herself from Spotify, and her record sales skyrocketed. So there is hope.
It's a tale of two classes, those who are beyond the moat and those who are outside the moat. And all of these deals like TTIP and TPP, all the big trade deals, you see them being negotiated on behalf of this sort of system, whereby things that used to be free, like your water, like your agriculture, like the sunshine, like photosynthesis, all this stuff, it will have toll booths erected on copyright grounds that they say they pointed to that and they copyrighted it.
Well, it's a rentier class. If you can charge people for air, water, photosynthesis, and with the invasiveness of virtual reality, soon you'll be charged for thinking, then that's a great business to be in, just like the prison business. You just sit back and count your money. You're not actually working for a living. These are rentiers. These are plunderers.
Yes.
As Frederick Bastiat said, if the entire economy is run by plunderers, then all levels of society will mimic this plundering. So the result are ISIS, Al-Qaeda, terrorism, and everything else that comes with it, engineered by the same mentality. Or the banker in Hong Kong who slit the throat of two women who was taking a selfie with the corpse, we understand. That's the Bill Gates. That's separated at birth. That's Bill Gates' twin brother, the banker taking selfies with the corpse of the woman he just murdered, and over there in Hong Kong or in the Philippines, wherever he's playing around there. They're the same mentality.
Those outside the moat, of course, they're the victims of these very trade deals. They're the ones that, if you Google it, working for free. This is more and more, all the elites inside the moated castles are saying that people should work for free. All sorts of people should work for free. Now, inside the castle with the copyright cartel is this sort of story. Does Kim Kardashian have her eye on your bottom? The celebrity is attempting to copyright her bum. How long before she comes after yours? Kim Kardashian is angry at a woman the piece refers to as internet bottom sensation Jen Selter. Selter has been posting photographs of her large buttocks on Instagram, an activity Kardashian apparently feels is an unacceptable infringement upon her very raison d'etre. One of the gangplanks of Kim Kardashian's global celebrity being her non-parallel ability to take photographs of her own large buttocks with a camera phone. So she's saying this woman taking selfies, speaking of selfies, of her large bottom in a mirror is copyrighted by her. she's looking into this. I was hoping it was a joke or a hoax. I keep on looking back at this Guardian article to hope they put a disclaimer that, oh, this is a hoax.
Well, these are the Hollywood shysters, the copyright, patent, trademark shysters and cartel of Hollywood. They can copyright things that have been free, like naked women's buttocks, and use the power and the economy of scale of their legal global mafia of copyright to harass people who have bums, who have large bums. So Kim Kardashian wants to monopolize large female bums.
Well, she could go to the British Museum, the whole African section, those ancient, thousands of years old sculptures of giant-bottomed women. Across Europe, too, they found all of these giant-bottomed women.
But this is the same thing Bill Gates is trying to do with food, or what he does with his Microsoft products over there at Microsoft, or the Hollywood is trying to do with fair use law, destroying it with their output of digital properties. And again, this is trying to stop history in its tracks. They don't want DNA to reproduce. They don't want DNA to copy. They don't want there to be diversity. They don't want there to be any kind of variety. Oh, they want a monoculture of everyone having the exact same Kim Kardashian that she gets a copyright license fee on every time someone shows their she gets a license fee. That's what she wants. Now, it sounds ludicrous, but she believes she can do this because she's part of the copyright cartel. Bill Gates believes he can charge people for growing seeds because he owns the patent on the seeds or the trademark on the seeds. And they're getting away with it because nobody's out there trying to stop them. Barack Obama was not obviously a lame duck. Never. The greatest day of his presidency was the inauguration. It went straight to hell every day since then. No one else is trying to stop this, except maybe in the Eastern Europe or the Eurasia, where they're saying we don't want Monsanto. You know, that's what this whole Ukraine conflict's about.
Finally, I want to say, speaking of big jackasses, there is a big story, a breaking story, groundbreaking story from Matt Taibbi in Rolling Stone, and it's called The $9 Billion Witness. Meet the woman JP Morgan Chase paid one of the largest fines in American history to keep from talking. So we're going to talk to her next week. Her name is Elaine Fleischman, and she has come out. She was a former lawyer at JP Morgan Chase during the height of what she considers their fraud in the mortgage-backed security department. So we're going to talk to her next week. This is a great piece from Matt Taibbi. You should go check it out in Rolling Stone.
Matt the King Taibbi! I can hardly wait. Stacey, thanks so much.
Does my bum look big in this?
I own the copyright on that bum. Stay tuned for the second half. A whole lot more.
Days in the mystery country, among people who are not used to the presence of journalists, in areas never before filmed by cameras, seeing the life that international press headlines never consider. RT introduces you to life in North Korea. Right from the scene. First-rate news and eye-gripping pictures. On our reporters' Twitter and Instagram. To be in the know, follow us online.
I know CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News have taken some knocks lately, but the fact is I admire their commitment to cover all sides of a story, just in case one of them happens to be accurate.
That was funny, but it's closer to the truth than you might think. Excellent. Because when politicians and the mainstream media work side by side, the joke is actually on you. At RT News, we have a different approach. LOL. Because the news of the world just is not this funny.
I'm not laughing, damn it, I'm not laughing!
You guys stick to the jokes, we'll handle the news.
Do we we speak your language. Want news, programs and documentaries in Arabic? It's all here on RT. Reporting from the world's hotspots, VIP interviews, intriguing stories. Are you here? Then try RT Arabic. To find out more, visit arabic.rt.com.
Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to turn to Robert Kennedy Jr. of the Waterkeeper Alliance. Robert Kennedy Jr., welcome to the Keiser Report.
Thanks for having me, Max.
Is it okay if I go ahead with Bobby?
Yes.
That's okay?
Yeah.
Fine. Great. Fantastic. All right. Very nice. Bobby, Waterkeeper Alliance, what is it? Talk to us a little bit about it.
Waterkeeper Alliance, the biggest water protection group in the world. It was founded actually back in the mid-1960s by a blue-collar coalition of commercial and recreational fishermen who mobilized on the Hudson to reclaim the river from its polluters. And the Hudson at that time was one of the most polluted rivers in the world. They discovered some ancient navigational statutes that allowed them to sue polluters and collect bounties. And they began suing polluters on the Hudson. They used bounties to construct a boat in 1973 called the Waterkeeper. They hired me they hired a commercial fisherman named John Cronin as their first full-time waterkeeper in 1983, and he hired me a year later as the prosecuting attorney for the group. And since then, we've brought over 500 successful legal actions, and we've forced polluters on the river to spend about $5.5 billion restoring the Hudson today, largely as a result of our work. The Hudson River is an international model for ecosystem protection. It's the richest waterway in the North Atlantic. It produces more pounds of fish per acre, more biomass per gallon than any waterway in the Atlantic Ocean north of the equator. And its miraculous resurrection has inspired the creation of waterkeepers now all over the United States and Latin America and Canada. And even Australia, we have 17 waterkeepers. Each one has a boat, a patrol boat. They each have a full-time paid waterkeeper, and they fight to protect that section of waterway for their local communities. There's a recognition that the reason we protect water is for the community.
And property values go up.
Oh, yeah. On the
I mean, this is
Hudson.
the thing about environmental causes is, the costs are huge, it's too expensive. But, as this shows, actually, it adds incredible value.
Yeah.
Property values goes up. This is not a net loser.
Right. On the Hudson, when we started out, the lowest priced housing and the lowest priced real estate was closest to the river. Today, that real estate is by far the highest price in virtually every community up and down the river, and it's generating tax revenue. The best investment a community can make, really, if it wants to revivify, restore, rejuvenate its communities, is to invest in a local waterway. A lot of people accept the mantra that is promoted by the big polluters and their indentured servants in our political process and their toadies in the media, that we have to choose between good environmental protection on the one hand and a strong economy on the other, and that's a false choice. In 100% of the situations, good environmental policy is identical to good economic policy. If we want to measure the economy, and this is how we ought to be measuring it, based upon how it produces jobs and the dignity of jobs over the generations, over the long term, and how it preserves the value of the assets of our community. If, on the other hand, we want to do, for example, what the Koch brothers are trying to urge the American Congress and our political structure to do, which is to treat the planet as if it were a business in liquidation, convert our natural resources to cash as quickly as possible, have a few years of pollution-based prosperity, we can generate an instantaneous cash flow and the illusion of a prosperous economy, and we can make a few people billionaires by impoverishing the rest of us. But our children are going to pay for our joyride, and they're going to pay for it with denuded landscapes and poor health and huge cleanup costs that are going to amplify over time, and that they'll never be able to pay. Environmental injury is deficit spending. It's a way of loading the costs of our generation's prosperity onto the backs of our children.
Now, you mentioned the Koch brothers, and there was just a huge election cycle, the midterm elections in the U.S., and from what I'm gathering from our vantage point here in the UK, that the Koch brothers are out there spending a lot of money influencing elections all over the country. And their agenda is definitely carbon-based or oil and gas-based. That's your thoughts?
Yeah, the Koch brothers are now the richest people in the world if you put their fortunes together. And I think they're the fourth richest individually. They are the largest privately owned oil company in the world. And they spent in this election, they spent $290 million. It's the most that's ever been spent on any midterm election in the United States. But they spent that money not because they're American patriots or because they believe in, they're investing in the good of humanity, but they invest so that they can increase, because it's a good investment in their corporate profits. And so they're fighting to destroy solar energy in its infancy in our country. They have, in every state now, they have an organization called the American Legislative Exchange Council that's trying to end any kind of subsidies or supports for solar energy. Meanwhile, hike the enormous, massive subsidies that are going to the incumbents, to the oil, to the carbon cronies, to the oil industry, the coal industry, the gas industry in our country. It's almost impossible now in the United States to build a transmission line, and they've made it that way. Whereas very, very easy to build a pipeline. So the infrastructure for the oil industry is very simple to build, whereas the infrastructure for solar and wind and for alternative energy is almost impossible. There's only been 600 miles of electric transmission lines built in our country over the past 12 years, and there's been 16,000 miles of pipeline built during the same period. And that's largely because of investments that the Koch brothers have made into our political process. And
it seems like the Koch brothers are almost the antithesis of what America has stood for 200 years. There was always this notion in America of the public domain, the parks, the public parks, the altruism almost. Those who had great wealth, they went on to create great libraries, great public parks, etc. The Roosevelts and certainly your family has been involved. It seems like they're the opposite.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly what they are. They're trying to dismantle American democracy. And, the environment and democracy are really intertwined. One of the primary functions of government is to safeguard the commons, which is, those properties that cannot be reduced to private property ownership, but by their nature are the assets of the entire community. The air, the water, the wildlife, the fisheries, the public lands, as you say, the wandering animals. And those, those things belong to the people. The Thames, which we're looking at here, belongs to the people of London. Every child, whether they're black or white or rich or poor or humble or noble, has a right to go down to this waterway and pull out a fish and bring it home and feed it to their family with the security that they're not poisoning somebody.
Well, let's talk about a company.
That commons is now being liquidated by large industries for cash. And the Koch brothers are literally changing the laws in our country to allow themselves to privatize the air by polluting it, the number one polluter in our country, to privatize the water and the fisheries by polluting them so the rest of us can't enjoy or eat them, and to destroy the things that belong to other Americans. And they're turning our country, and their money is turning our country into the very kind of, rigid aristocracy and corporate kleptocracy that America's Americans with European ancestors, those European ancestors came to our country to escape that kind of, stifling.
Right, it seems, as I said, antithetical to the entire notion of America to begin with. The Koch brothers seem like alien forces that are really bringing in ideas that are completely anti-American. I would say, but you're dedicated to introducing the Clean Water Act-like legislation. But Halliburton, another big company, they have an exemption, the Halliburton exemption that allows fracking companies to disregard the Clean Water Act. So no matter how many laws you pass, these corporations get an exemption. So on the political, where the rubber hits the road, you can introduce all this legislation you want, but these corporations seem to be just ignore it.
Yeah, and what you were saying about them being kind of anti-American, I'll just give you an example. Halliburton took $10 billion in no-bid, cost-plus contracts during the Iraq War. As soon as that war was over, they changed their residency from the United States to the Cayman Islands and to Lucerne in Switzerland. So these are not American corporations, as many Americans believe. These are foreign entities that are undermining our government and that are undermining democracy and disabling or dismantling the laws that are supposed to protect public health in our country.
Okay, let me jump in. Denton, Texas just passed a ban on fracking as part of this election cycle. The corporations have applied for an emergency injunction against the ban. Okay, again, the political process being usurped by corporate power. What the heck is going on, Bobby Kennedy Jr.?
Well, that's right. And it's, you know, we had a law in our country. The corporations almost took over America back in the Gilded Age. And in fact, we virtually lost American democracy. And you had these big trusts. You had the steel trusts and the sugar trusts and the coal trusts, et cetera, with these interlocking boards with the same characters who were literally choosing American senators, because we didn't have direct election of American senators back then. And then at that time, you had a group of muckraking journalists. You had Ida Tarbell and Sinclair Lewis and Upton Sinclair and McClure's magazine. And then you had the populist movement, the progressive movement coming from the cities and the countries. And you had this very charismatic leader, Teddy Roosevelt, who came in, and they passed these laws to put the bit into the mouth of corporate power. They passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, which broke up the Standard Oil and the other corporations. They passed a graduated income tax on corporations and wealthy Americans so that they had to start paying their share. They passed minimum wage legislation, the 40-hour work week, and the most important law that they passed, many other laws, direct election of American senators. The most important one was in 1907, a ban on corporate money into the federal political process. Well, in 2010, after 103 years, the U.S. Supreme Court that we have now, the most business-friendly, corporate-friendly court in our American history, threw out that century-old statute and allowed the tsunami of corporate money to enter the American political process. And here's what we know, Max. We know that from the data over the past 20 years that over 95% of American elections have been won by the candidate who has the most money. So we know that money can buy the political process in our country, and that's what's happening right now. There was a recent study that was done by a big foundation in our country that looked at all the different sectors of our economy, that looked at textiles and paper and apparel and energy and media and all these different and medical. And they said, where is the best place historically over the past 3 decades to put money to get a good return on investment? And by far, the best investment that any company can make in our country is to invest money in the political process.
All right, thanks for being on the Keiser Report.
Thanks so much for having me, Max.
All right, and that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacey Herbert. I'd like to thank our guest, Robert Kennedy Jr. If you'd like to get in touch, tweet us at Keiser Report. Until next time, bye, y'all.